Welcome everyone to another episode of Slasher Scotty. I am your host, Scotty McCoy, and boy, do I have a surprise for all of you. We are roughly less than a week from Halloween, and who better to have on my show than Christopher Durand, who played Michael Myers in Halloween H20 20 years later. Hey, Chris, how are you doing?
Great, man. Good to be here.
I'm so glad to have you on. I mean, we've been talking for months now and we finally got to make it happen. I'm so glad it could be this close to Halloween.
Yeah, we squeezed it in under the wire this time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the first question I got for you is, how did you get your start into acting and into doing stunts?
So stunt work, I didn't know anything about when I was a kid. My parents were academics, basically. They were physicists.
Nice.
And I had no connection to the business at all. But I had a friend in high school who was a phenomenal martial artist, and his mom was an actress. And he kind of wanted to use his skills. So, and we trained together all the time. So he kind of got a start through her introducing him to some stunt people she knew. And then I learned that, hey, there's this cool business you can do, or you get to do all the stuff I do anyway. You know, basically get to play cowboys and Indians and do a lot of sports. And so I kind of learned more and more about it and started pursuing that, which is not an easy thing to get into. It was a very small community in those days, maybe 400 or 500 people in all of Hollywood that actually could make a living at it. And I used to go and sneak on sets and introduce myself to people. You'd find out who was running a show. Used to hustle, basically. In those days, I would sneak onto sound stages in movie studios, which of course you can't remotely do now. And you hit the streets, and then eventually you start to know people. And I had also a background in rock climbing, and a friend of mine that same friend was starting to rig with somebody with some big cable falls, and so I got involved that way. And eventually there was a slot for me, which happened to be a horror movie for my first movie.
Nice.
A thing called Cameron's Closet. And we did all of that, and then it slowly built through the years. And then acting actually came about. I was a very shy kid. So I was probably the last person who was going to pursue acting. Sorry, I got to adjust myself here. But when you're on camera doing stunts, there's basically three compartments for stunts. You can either be doubling somebody, doing what's called ND, which is nondescript, where you're part of a crowd. So say a car crashing through a restaurant, you know, everyone's got to scatter out of the way. That's all stunts. And then there's playing parts. Okay. And so more and more, I realized that you had to kind of step it up and be willing to do that if you were going to work a lot. And so you start doing small things. And of course, I've got the best teachers in the world in front of me, because it's the people who are hired to carry these films that I get to sit there and watch at close range. And you pay attention, you watch the cameras, you watch the angles, you watch what they do, and you just throw yourself into it. So I kind of was trial by fire.
Nice, nice. That's awesome. So how did you happen to get the role of Michael Myers? Did you audition? If so, what was that process like?
Yeah, so the way that came about, the stunt community, like I said, is very small. And when it came to Halloween, they had traditionally used stunt people for the role. But they, this time, auditioned a whole bunch of people and didn't like anyone. And then they went to Jamie Lee Curtis's double, Donna Keegan, who happened to be running the show, and said, you know, can you send us some guys? And she said, I'm not going to do a cattle call, but I'll give you 5 qualified guys. Here they are. Pick one of them. And I was one of those, and we had worked together over the years, and she knew what my background was and what I could do physically. And the long and short of it is I just went in and met with them and sat and talked. It was Steve Miner and Mark Catone, who was the first AD. And we just sat and talked about what my background was, what I could do. And I didn't realize at the time that I was Donna's first pick. Nice. And it kind of came down to me and one other guy. And they literally told me later, they decided by saying, who do you want to hang out with for the next 3 months?
Nice, nice. So speaking of Jamie Lee Curtis, what was it like working with her?
It was great. She's a real pro all the way. Obviously, this was revisiting what started her career. So it was exciting in that sense, I think, for everybody. She's a hands-on person, meaning she wants to jump in and help out whenever she can, but you can't, because her role is to carry the film and her position. So you can't help move lights or carry bags or whatever that gets the film made. So she kind of had to go against her nature and hold back and not do that. Now, listen, I've had the same thing happen many, many times. When you're getting ready to do some scene and you're in makeup and you're in wardrobe and you're ready to go, and everybody needs to set pads or a catcher for a fall or something like that, you cannot help because you're camera ready. So you have to, recuse yourself and back up and let everyone else do their job, which is not easy for someone like Jamie who wants to be involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess continuing on the trend of Jamie Lee Curtis, we know that there is an iconic shot between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode where they're staring at each other in the circular window. I've seen this movie a million times, and every single time that scene literally gets me all the time. It gives me the chills. So what is the process of making that iconic shot? Like, was that like really thought of, like, this is a shot that we're going to use in every promotional trailer?
I don't know what their thinking was. Obviously, it's a pivotal moment in the film, so I'm pretty sure that was on the radar for that.
Right.
Really, if you think about H2O and what made it kind of smart, backing up a little bit, is that she wasn't, happy in life. She wasn't happy-go-lucky, unaware. She was freaking out. She was drinking. She's popping pills. Her son is the age she was when she was fighting Michael. So it's more personal even than if it's just me after her, because there's a higher stakes for her. And remember, the whole film up to then, I'm real. Other people know I'm real, but she doesn't yet. She's had hallucinations of me and she hasn't seen me. So that's kind of when it brings reality full circle and gets her fully engaged and in play. So it's kind of this crescendo of buildup. And then from then moving forward, it's just on.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it obviously, like, when that shot's all, like, in all the trailers leading up to the movie's release. It was one of those shots, like, this is the first time we're seeing Laurie Strode and Michael Myers now face to face 20 years later.
Right. And the thing about that, if you think about what happened just before that, okay, when I've got the kids pinned and I'm cycling through the keys and they're pounding on the door. So when we did that shot and that whole piece, I purposely separated myself from them for well over an hour before the shot. I avoided them. And then when they were set in place, I was quite a ways away, and I got the mask on and was ready, and they were inviting me over, and I said, no, just go ahead and roll. And I stacked myself up behind camera and approached in such a way that they couldn't see me. So when they said action, I basically appeared. And that was the first time they'd seen me in a while, and I was in full mode. And of course, you're pouncing on them and slamming into the gate, and it's shocking. So it helped them, but it's also the tone of how Michael was at that point. He's full steam. So when you come through that door, he's still in that mode. He's still in that I'm going to kill you mode. And then there's a break when they first come face to face, and he starts in that mode, and then he shifts to, oh, hi, and sees her, and he shifts his whole attitude because he recognizes her. So there's a kind of a shift in tone at the same time, because now it's personal in different ways, right? It's not just personal in the sense that I'm now face to face with her and she knows I'm real. There is that, but it's also that recognition and that little beat, which isn't tries to kill her, which is just recognizing her and then disappearing, which makes it really powerful.
Absolutely. It was very powerful. So obviously, as we mentioned, you are a stunt man and you did the stunts for these scenes. So which do you believe was the best stunt that you had to perform in Halloween H2O? And which do you believe was also the hardest one that you had to perform?
There are different kinds. Sometimes smaller things are trickier. So probably coming out the van window was the most dangerous
Right.
and the trickiest. We came in at about 45 miles an hour and hit the brakes, and I spit through. And we had a platform set up, so I was going to come through the way I wanted to.
Right.
But I had to duck my head. So when I'm coming through the windshield, I'm now blind, and I have to recover in the air.
Yeah.
And of course, you take any shot you can as far as you can. So we took that all the way through me standing back up, and her starting to come at me again. So we never cut for a big chunk of that. That was probably the trickiest, like danger-wise and intensity-wise. Let's see, hitting the table is hitting the table, right, for the fall.
Yeah.
Tumbling down the hill is something that takes a lot of skill in terms of, hitting marks as I come in. And then the actual van, getting pinned by the van.
Yeah.
We were trying to figure out how to do that because they had the van suspended on a crane, but of course it's swinging and turning and you can't entirely control it. So they weren't sure what to do. And I came up with a suggestion. Is what we did is we filmed it backwards.
Nice.
So we started with the van in place and me pinned, arched up, and then they yanked it away. And I did all of my reactions backwards and rolled out of the scene.
Right.
So that's kind of a tricky thing. It's, there's still a stunt, there's still a van above you, it's still being moved, it's still dangerous, and I'm having to do everything in reverse.
Nice.
So that was kind of a fun one. When I had Adam up in the air, when I stuck him and lifted him in the hallway, I wasn't doing the stunt, but my friend did. So we had Adam suspended, but when it comes time for the drop, the double had to jump up in the air into that position and then fall flat, which is just a thumper.
Nice.
It's a horrible big hit.
Yeah.
So my concern being involved with the stunt is that I don't, when I'm doing them, I want to do them once. When it's a friend of mine like that, I really only want to do it once. So I had to time my bit with the knife going up with him and ripping it out as he fell. So it was perfectly timed, and he didn't have to do this more than one time.
Nice.
So there's elements that you don't think about like that, where it's not directly me, but you're involved in it.
Yeah.
And it's, you want to be safe and you want everyone to be healthy and keep working.
Absolutely. So when obviously we know in Resurrection, they kind of retconned the end of Michael Myers. So this was supposed to be the end of Michael Myers to an extent. But did you know that by the end of this movie that they were going to go with the route of resurrecting Michael Myers, like, for example, with the paramedic? So
the deal was Jamie would come back if she could finish what was considered a trilogy. So 1, 2, and then H2O.
Right.
And to do that, she wanted to kill Michael. But of course, it's their franchise and they don't want to kill the franchise. So the compromise was that she would get to have the ending she wanted, but they had to give her something like 2 minutes or so of screen time for the next one to carry the franchise forward. Okay. And the device was to switch Michael. So we knew that before we started filming.
Okay.
And so when it came to playing that scene, it kind of had to play at 3 levels. It had to play, reaching out. It had to play as a guy who's been stuffed in this thing and is taped up, going, what the heck's going on?
Yep.
It had to be Michael, who had gotten the snot knocked out of him, kind of going, what have I done? And then it had to be Michael saying, just touch me. Like, just make contact and I'll finish this. And it kind of had to morph through all of those at the same time, which was tricky at best because, there's no dialogue, there's no facial expression. You've got your eyes.
Absolutely. And that's where it all
he kind of let me do what I thought was right. And as everyone says, in Hollywood, no news is good news.
Yep.
You don't get showered with accolades, but if something's wrong, you'll hear about it.
Yep.
Otherwise, they're like, good, check the gate, move on. Right.
Absolutely. Exactly. So which death scene that you performed in the film did you enjoy the most doing?
Which kill?
Yeah, which kill?
Yeah, I think the kind of cool one was Adam, when I lifted him up in the hallway. And the reason was because it wasn't about Adam.
Right.
He was incidental, because if you notice, I lift him up and I'm staring her down.
Yeah.
right? It's not
Yep.
about, it's like, look what I'm going to come do to you. So
Yep.
it's toying with her.
Yeah.
And of course, it's freaky and, and wrong in a lot of
It
ways.
really is, and I have to give Adam props because just the way he was shaking and everything, like it added so much more to the effect of the death.
Yeah, no, he did a fabulous job. I mean, I
Yeah.
had an A-list cast around me, so
Absolutely.
pretty lucky to
Absolutely.
know.
Yeah, and if you think about it, this Halloween is probably at least the very first Halloween that had a bigger cast attached to it with, Jamie Lee Curtis, Adam Arkin, and Josh Hartnett, who was getting a start, Jordan Levitt,
Yep.
So like all these things that were, all these cast members, like it was a lot bigger than the past movies. Because if you think about it, all the other movies, they didn't have like really big names attached to them. You know what
No,
I mean?
no,
Yeah.
but this was, again, this was the anniversary. This was coming
Yeah.
back and revisiting where Jamie started,
Yeah.
and then her trying to wrap it up in a
Absolutely.
neat bundle. So yeah, we had a little bit more money and, like I said, A-list crew and cast. So
Yeah.
I was pretty lucky to get that one.
Absolutely. So, if you were asked to be brought back as Michael Myers in a future Halloween film, would you return?
The short answer is it depends.
Okay.
It depends on kind of what is involved with it, because if you look at it, what we just discussed, I had such a good cast. I
Mhm.
had Jamie coming back for the first time with something. We had the energy. The timing was right in the world
Mhm.
for that to come back around. So it was, it's hard to ask for more.
Yeah.
So to revisit it would be fun for sure.
Mhm.
But I'd really want the script to be good. So I think
Absolutely.
I'd have to evaluate that if it came up.
Absolutely. So did you happen to see Halloween Kills in theaters?
I haven't. When you got kids, you don't see movies a lot. You're busy. So
Good point. Good point.
yeah.
So the last question I got for you is, do you have any like future projects in the works, convention appearances, or anything else that you would like to promote to the listening and viewing audience, as well as any social media accounts or websites to plug?
If you want to find me on Facebook. That's generally where I go. There's work is very, very slow right now, still due to COVID restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not a lot going on. I do have a book that I wrote during this whole time, and a little bit before that I started it. It's called Hanifa.
Okay.
It's about an African woman who's an acid attack survivor. So it's her story. So we hope to get that out there soon. I will post all of that kind of stuff as soon as it's available. I have another big project which I'm slated for, which has multiple installments.
Nice.
But I can't speak about it.
No problem. I'm sure that'll be updated on your IMDb, right?
Yeah, it's something I've got a non-disclosure. So
No.
I have something good coming up. And in the meantime, I've got a couple of trilogies that I am writing.
Okay.
Both of which the first scripts are done for. One of which I'm in the middle of the second script right now, and 3 is already outlined. So I'm going to write 2 and 3 end to end, and going through the same production as the one I can't talk about. Hopefully get those in line, and then I'll be playing in various capacities on camera and behind camera.
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan. Well, I thank you so much, Chris, for joining me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be here, and happy Halloween, everyone.
Yep. Thank you. Happy Halloween. You have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too, man.
Right. Bye.